Welcome to today's movie recap. Today, the movie we are reviewing is Life Mark. It's a faith based drama inspired by a true story about adoption, forgiveness, and second chances. The scenes in the movie Life Mark keep moving from present to the past, back and forth. So let me introduce to you the people in this movie so that at any point you see them, you know at which part of the movie we are viewing. We have David Colton, the lead actor, an 18-year-old high school senior who was adopted as an infant. David's adoptive father, Jimmy Colton. Susan Colton, David's adoptive mother, who supports him through the reunion process. Melissa Getz, David's birth mother, who reaches out to him 18 years after placing him for adoption. Then we also had another person who acted as the young Melissa, portraying Melissa during flashbacks to her teenage years as she makes the choice to place her baby for adoption. We have Sean Getz, Melissa's husband, Brian, David's biological father, Ned, David's close friend who provides comic relief and documents the reunion on his phone. This movie follows a teenager named David whose life changes forever when his birth mother reaches out to him after 18 years. What starts as a normal coming of age story slowly turns into an emotional journey about identity, family, and the value of life. So, grab yourself a snack and let's dig right in. The movie begins in the late 1990s with a young teenage girl named Melissa. She finds out that she's pregnant after a relationship with her boyfriend Brian. Both of them are terrified and completely unprepared to become parents. Melissa's mother pressures her towards abortion, believing it's the easiest solution. Melissa eventually arrives at an abortion clinic. The atmosphere is cold and tense, and she looks emotionally overwhelmed. Right before the procedure begins, she suddenly changes her mind. She tells the doctor she can't go through with it. This moment becomes the turning point of the entire story. Instead of ending the pregnancy, Melissa decides to carry the baby to term and place him for adoption. It's a painful choice, but she believes it's the best thing she can do for the child. The film then shifts 18 years into the future. We meet David Colton, an energetic and athletic teenager living in Louisiana with his adoptive parents, Jimmy and Susan. David has grown up in a loving Christian household and has a close relationship with both of his parents. He enjoys basketball, hanging out with friends, and preparing for adulthood like any normal teenager. David already knows he was adopted, and his parents have never hidden it from him. Even though he's occasionally curious about his biological family, he's always felt secure and loved in the family he has. Jimmy, David's adoptive father, is especially supportive and constantly encourages him. Their relationship feels natural and genuine, almost like best friends. At first, the movie spends time showing David's comfortable life. Some viewers may think things are moving slowly, but this calm setup is important because it shows how stable and loved David's life really is. One day, everything changes. Melissa, now older and married, decides she can no longer ignore the desire to reconnect with the son she gave up years ago. She contacts the adoption agency and asks whether David would be willing to hear from her. The agency then reaches out to David's parents. Jimmy and Susan are surprised, but instead of reacting negatively, they approach the situation carefully and honestly. They tell David the truth and give him space to decide what he wants to do. David is stunned. Even though he always knew he was adopted, the reality of his birth mother suddenly wanting to contact feels overwhelming. Questions begin racing through his mind. Why did she give him away? What kind of person is she now? Does she regret her decision? And perhaps most importantly, why now? David struggles emotionally because part of him fears this connection could somehow affect the relationship with the parents who raised him. But Jimmy reassures him in one of the movie's strongest moments. He tells David that nothing will ever change the fact that he is their son. Instead of acting possessive or insecure, David's parents encourage him to seek answers. This becomes one of the film's main themes. True love is not selfish. After thinking it over, David decides to respond to Melissa. The two begin communicating online. At first, the conversations are awkward and curious. Melissa is emotional and nervous, while David doesn't know how open he should be. Still, little by little, they begin building trust. Melissa tells David that she has thought about him every single year since giving him up. She explains how difficult the decision was and admits she often wondered what his life turned out to be like. David learns that Melissa eventually got married and built a stable life, but she never forgot him. As David processes all this information, he becomes more curious about his biological father, Brian. Melissa explains that Brian was also young and scared at the time. Although they both cared about each other, they weren't mature enough to raise a child. Eventually, David agrees to meet Melissa in person. The build-up to this scene is emotional because the movie understands how huge this moment is. 18 years of questions, uncertainty, and imagination are about to collide in real life. When they finally meet face to face, both of them are overwhelmed with emotion. Melissa breaks down crying almost immediately. David is nervous but compassionate. The meeting isn't dramatic in a Hollywood-style way. Instead, it feels quite human and sincere. Melissa apologizes for not being part of his life, but David reassures her that he had a wonderful upbringing. Then comes one of the most shocking revelations in the movie. Melissa tells David that she almost aborted him. David is completely stunned. Up until this point, he knew he was adopted, but he never realized how close he came to never being born at all. The news shakes him deeply. For the first time, David fully understands the gravity of Melissa's decision all those years ago. If she had made a different choice at the clinic, his entire life would never have happened. The film leans heavily into its pro-life message here, presenting David's life as proof that choosing adoption created something beautiful and meaningful. David struggles emotionally after learning the truth. He begins reflecting on his friendships, memories, parents, and future. Every experience he's ever had suddenly feels more precious because he realizes how narrowly his life existed at all. Meanwhile, Jamie notices David withdrawing emotionally and talks to him again. Jamie explains that although the truth is painful, it also reveals how much courage Melissa showed by choosing life even when she was scared and alone. Rather than encouraging resentment, Jamie pushes David toward compassion and gratitude. Eventually, David decides he wants to meet Brian, his biological father. Unlike Melissa, Brian is initially more hesitant and uncomfortable. He carries guilt and shame over the past, but when they finally meet, Brian is emotional and sincere. The meeting gives David a more complete understanding of his origins. For the first time in his life, he sees the full picture of what happened before he was born. Instead of finding villains, he finds flawed human beings who made difficult decisions while scared and immature. This realization helps David mature emotionally. Rather than become angry, he begins appreciating all the people connected to his story. His birth parents for choosing adoption, and his adoptive parents for raising him with unconditional love. Near the end of the movie, the emotional walls between everyone begin breaking down. Melissa becomes more integrated into David's life, but the film carefully makes sure this never threatens the role of Jimmy and Susan. The movie repeatedly emphasizes that adoption didn't replace one family with another. It expanded the meaning of family itself. One particularly emotional scene happens when Melissa thanks Jimmy and Susan for giving David such an incredible life. You can feel the mature respect between them. There is no bitterness, no jealousy, only gratitude. By the final act, David fully embraces his identity and realizes he doesn't have to choose between families. He can love both his adoptive parents and biological parents at the same time. This movie ends at an uplifting and emotional note, reinforcing its theme of forgiveness, reconciliation, faith, and the importance of life. Before the credits roll, the film reminds viewers that the story is based on real events and inspired by the true story of David Scotton, whose life and adoption journey became widely known through a documentary years earlier. And that's the story of Life Mac. Unlike many dramas that rely on shocking twists or non-stop conflict, this movie focuses on emotional honesty and heartfelt conversations. Whether viewers agree with this message or not, the film clearly aims to present adoption as helpful and life-affirming. If you enjoyed this recap, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below with another movie you'd like recapped next. See you next time.